Hello, friends of bliss, and greetings from one of the more far-flung corners of the earth. This month, we are coming to you live, well, not live, but for our intents and purposes, live from South Africa. Behind me is the magic, the wonder, the beautiful region that is Walker Bay. This is one of the southernmost and one of the most interesting parts of the wine world, and we are joined today by a returning friend and now Master Sommelier, Jon Eichholz. Jon, why don't you tell us a little bit about what's happened since we last recorded a couple of videos?
Yeah, very excited to be here with you all, Bliss Wine family. Thank you so much for having me. Since we've last recorded videos, I've figured out how to taste wine, so now I get to be a Master Sommelier, but that being said, I am not the double Master Sommelier that Andrey Ivanov is, because he passed tasting twice. I only did it once.
Yeah, shout out to my friend Max Cast. Max and I are the only two people that have passed 4 parts of the Master Sommelier exam in 1 year. Yeah, 2018. But Jon is one of 2 people to have passed the exam this past year in 2023 for the Americas chapter, and we congratulate you and welcome to the club.
No, thank you. Not here without you, good sir.
Well, today we are going to go into another really far-flung part of the world. And ironically, I was looking up, like what is the furthest away from kind of where you live now and where I used to live that we could actually travel to in the wine world. And it turns out that from San Francisco, about the furthest place you can possibly travel to in the wine world is here to South Africa. And the furthest place you could travel to from New York is Margaret River.
Oh, nice.
In Western Australia. When you stand on the banks of the Indian Ocean out here and you look out to the west, the next piece of land in that general direction is Madagascar, which is just 7,500 miles and of nothing but open ocean. And it is one of the most beautiful, one of the most kind of hauntingly isolated, and one of the most exciting wine regions in the world right now. And we are going to be tasting the wines of Chris and Joanne Davies and Windows Estate. Now, picture it. Margaret River, 2019. Bright, bushy-eyed, very freshly minted Master Sommelier is on a research trip. And between going to the classic producers of the region, the Lewins, the Cullens, the Vast Felixes, I met a young sommelier named Ava Mays, and she told me that it would be just a complete crime for me to leave Margaret River without tasting the wines of Windows Estate. And tiny little small production winery in Yallingup. And I said, of course, let me do it, and rushed there after my appointment at Lewin, doing something that you should never do, drive very fast when the sun is going down in Australia. Apparently that's when all the roos start jumping out in the middle of the road. And that led me to meet Jo, and she kept the tasting room open for me for an extra 20 minutes, and my jaw basically dropped when I tasted these wines. And I said, how do you not have representation in the United States? And she told us that they're a very small family winery, but they're open to maybe sending the shocking, whopping amount of maybe 1 pallet per year to the United States. And I said, great, of which wine? And she said, no, Andrey, just 1 pallet total for all of the United States and Mexico. And we are very, very proud to bring you their first initial kind of launch here in the United States with us. So, Jonathan, where is Margaret River and what makes it special?
Well, first off, I feel so honored right now being some of the first people in America to try these wines. The Margaret River is a very special place that you find in Western Australia, kind of outside of the city of Perth. What's so cool about this winemaking region is we're approaching kind of the 60th anniversary or so of its existence. Gentleman, Dr. Gladstone delineated this winemaking region, and it's been truly special ever since. So really excited to dive into these wines and learn more about a small family winery over here.
Yeah. Just adding one other little small point, if anyone has ever heard me wax poetic about this lovely place called Santa Barbara, that I do just love so much. The reason I'm bringing it up is because there's only really 3 places in the world, in the winemaking world, where the confluence of a warm current and a cold current play a really strong pivotal role in the flavor profile and the types of wines that you can make in that region. I mentioned Santa Barbara. The second one is literally right behind me, the Hemelanard Valley and Cape South Coast here in South Africa. And then the last one is Margaret River. It is at this western corner of Australia that the Lewin Current, which is the warm water current that comes down the side of the Indian Ocean and the western coast of Australia, meets the cold Franklin Current coming up from Antarctica. And as a result, it is a place that you can pretty much grow almost any grape that you can think of, especially with climate change now. And the wines are really just a huge range of styles, from the super, super lean to the really big and generous. You can really do as much or as little with the wines as you want, and it's an incredibly, incredibly diverse place stylistically now for the production of wine. So we're going to start that off by tasting sparkling wine, and specifically Chenin Blanc. Ooh.
Yeah, this is my first ever sparkling wine from the Margaret River. This is my first ever Chenin Blanc from the Margaret River. So really excited to dig into this.
Yeah, this is a 24-year-old vineyard called the Home Block that was planted back in the mid-1990s. This is done the same exact way as Champagne, and this spends 2 years after the second fermentation on its yeast cells, on its lees, giving it a little bit of that slightly brioche kind of a quality.
Yeah, I don't know if you just saw that, but I had to take a second sip. This is so fun and bright and delicious and inviting, and I think it's so cool to get those familiar tasting notes of like the brioche and hazelnuts and almonds of Champagne. You get these beautiful like golden delicious apples and pears and honeysuckle of Chenin Blanc.
Yeah.
And obviously pairing this with the African sun, it's quite a tasty wine.
Yeah, no. You wouldn't be able to tell, but John is actually 2 shades darker than he was when he got here just about a week ago. And this is a wine that once again, bliss-sized production of about 2,000 bottles per year. And it is, I would say it's like you just described it, it's a perfect example of Chenin Blanc. Great for your sushi, great for your raw items at the very beginning of a meal, or just a great little intermezzo or way to cap off an evening.
I mean, when you're capping off an evening, I think this is a great pairing with chicken nuggets and mozzarella sticks. You know, it's bright and prickly and cuts through all that fat.
Absolutely.
That's actually what I might want after this. I know
Mozzarella sticks. Oh, yeah.
We haven't had those yet in South Africa. I don't think it's a thing here yet.
We'll bring it here.
Perfect. I look forward to it.
All right. So next up, we have another wine that you don't really think of this grape as you think of the powerhouse of Margaret River, but we thought we would bring you one because it is so unique and so fun. It's really one of the most unique flavor profiles in our entire portfolio, and that is Semillon. And John, what do you think this Semillon is going to taste like?
I'm excited to check it out. It's really funny with Australia. It's one of the countries that I think has kind of made Semillon almost a thing. And it's very popular on the eastern side of the country over in the Hunter Valley, where it does this very like bright, prickly, zesty style of white wine. I'm so very excited to check how this behaves on the complete opposite side of the Australian continent.
All right, let's give it a whirl. Gnarly.
Are we surfing right now? Gnarly. Also, the word of the week right now in South Africa is lekker, which is delicious, and I think this wine definitely qualifies as that, at least on the nose. I haven't tasted it yet.
That is some acid right there. Every time I taste this wine, I start thinking about wines that don't really like lead with a ton of fruit and how useful they are in the kitchen, especially if you're dealing with vegetables. To me, this wine smells like fresh cut celery a little bit, and in a really interesting and kind of like a cool cucumber kind of a way as well, making it a really great candidate for things like very delicate vegetables like white asparagus. That season's right around the corner, but also maybe things like cauliflower, things that are a little bit more kind of understated, but also, fried Brussels sprouts, things of that nature.
No, definitely. It's like super bright, super pretty, super focused and tension driven. And it leans more towards that savory side. Like your kind of celery is my like fennel bulb element here.
Yeah, that's right.
And definitely kind of almost even want this alongside chicken to be, say you didn't, roast it with fennel and put that alongside it. But definitely a very fun sushi wine here as well. Perfect for the summertime. And yeah, it's just very like bracing and bright. And I always like to think of pairings almost like a chord. And this is definitely like the high note of the chord, to say the least here.
Yeah.
Kind of cut through some things.
Yeah, and it just like, from other styles of Semillon out there, even from Australia, this is really different. I think that part of the reason why is that it is picked a little bit later than the wines of the Hunter Valley, the other place in Australia that's very famous for Semillon production. There, they have to pick the grapes super early because it's a much more humid and a much warmer region. And you get these very kind of underripe, very sharp lemon notes. And the wine is really, really kind of understated for like the first 10 years of its life. and then it starts to get really cool. Here, because they're harvesting it a bit later, because of the more consistent and a little bit more of the cooler climate of Margaret River, you get to see smell all of these aromatic flavors that you don't see on the other side of the country, and the wine is super approachable right out of the get-go.
And I think to your point there, comparing it to the Hunter Valley, that's a subtropical climate, whereas here, as Andrey mentioned earlier, there's kind of a confluence of a hot climate and a cool climate, and as climate change comes to impact this part of the world, that hot climate kind of goes further and further out, and that cool climate comes a little bit closer to the land. So this is one of the few regions in the world that is getting a little colder every year, so you can kind of do those longer hang times to get power, but not be overripe, which is quite impressive.
Yeah, I was mentioning the year 2019, and the 2 red wines we're about to taste come from that vintage. And when I was visiting there, it was the coldest year in the Margaret River, at least in terms of wine production, since 1981. It was also the first time they got frost in Margaret River since 1981. The change in the current, the Franklin Current is pushing the Lewin Current further out to sea, and so it kind of moves away from the very southern tip of Margaret River, and as a result, like about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, like this basically a blast chiller opens up on the backside of the valley, and they're growing Pinot Noir and Riesling down there now.
What?
Yeah, crazy, right?
Pinot Noir. See, this is a region you always associate with like Cabernet and Shiraz and Chardonnay, but like, wow, that's.
All right, well, that is a really delicious and refreshing look into Semillon. But John, what do you say we move into the dark side of the Force?
I mean, I've always believed Jar Jar Binks is a Sith, so we'll find out right now.
Oh, God. I thought I could go through this entire day without thinking about obscure movie references, but thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
Next up, we have a little Syrah. So you'll notice one of the first things that is not written on the bottle is Shiraz. And that might be a misnomer because isn't Shiraz from Australia? Yes, but Chris does believe that the way that he approaches this grape is going to be a little bit different than a lot of the wines in Australia have been historically made, not necessarily true today. And so he chooses to label his wines as Syrah. This is a really great representation of Margaret River's generosity, because I think that here you have a wine that's 13.5% alcohol. It's a little bit leaner, a little bit softer, a little bit more red fruit driven than black, and you still have this really kind of cool herbal, floral kind of a complexity, but the wine is still at its heart, at its core, a New World wine. It has a generosity of fruit that I think is very, very charming, very kind of approachable. And we are here. What did we have for dinner last night, John?
I mean, last night we had this wonderful Springbok carpaccio that was great. But we also had a little steak au poivre scenario, but definitely perfect for Springbok, which I feel like is one of our new favorite foods that we've discovered on this trip down to South Africa.
Oh yeah, deer. Yum. This is, to you, a little bit more of what you were expecting from Syrah from Australia, or do you think this is a little bit more kind of new schoolish?
Yeah, I think what's really fascinating about this is a kind of a wine you can only really make in Margaret River when you have kind of that more like relaxed, cool, long growing season and a really unique patchwork of soils. I think what's really fun about this wine is it is coming in at 13.5, and I think every single person in the Northern Rhone would kill to make a wine that's 13.5 right now. So you get a lot of restraint and elegance and lift, but at the same time, this really beautiful mid-palate warmth that's like screaming for some semblance of red meat to be on the palate right now. This is a super tasty wine.
And kind of what we were talking about earlier about the 2019 vintage being one of the really the cooler, coldest vintages in Margaret River. Really, only a couple of other comparisons. We have to go all the way back to 1981 to find a vintage where there was frost. This is not exactly a part of the world that's known for non-liquid precipitation. But yes, for 2 days in 2019, the Margaret River did see frost for the first time in 28 years. And also, as a result, it was the 38 years, my apologies.
That frost was before I was born, so I can tell you that.
This is one of those regions that is going against the grain when it comes to climate change. This is one of the few places in the world that I know of that's getting actually a little bit cooler, because the Lewin Current, which is the warm current that comes down the side of Western Australia, is getting pushed further out to sea and a little bit earlier by the cold Franklin current coming up from Antarctica. And as a result, around 4 o'clock, blast chiller opens up on the backside of Margaret River, and you are seeing a really wide style, kind of a delta between like the more traditional kind of like, you know, richer, fuller bodied styles of Cabernet and Chardonnay to when you go further south in the region, you're even starting to see Pinot Noir being grown. Yeah, I know.
That's
Gnarly.
crazy, because I feel like when you learn about this region, it's a lot of like Chardonnay, Cabernet, Syrah production. So kind of cool to see them pushing the envelope, and I think it really, you know, coalesces with the theme of these wines, that they're really pushing the envelope, honoring tradition, but at the same time, you know, really doing some new and cool things over in Margaret River.
Speaking of new and cool, that's a great segue. Next up is, oh, my apologies. Let's go back to Syrah and just mention that this is one of their larger productions, bottles-wise, and 5,467 bottles is the total number. We get down to here, this is a very, very Bliss-esque 2,700 bottles total. And this is one of my other favorite wines in the portfolio. This is Violette, and kind of under the radar sleeper rockstar. This is Chris and Joe's Bordeaux style blend. It leads with Cabernet Franc as the dominant varietal, followed by Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot. And here you can really see that cold climate shining, because you have this very pretty, very beautiful kind of purple fruit, huckleberry kind of tart, herbaceous kind of aroma. And I think that, you know, for me, these wines really do showcase, like I said, the climate, but also the very kind of precise, very very kind of distinctive hand that Chris wants to portray with the wines. There's nothing over the top about these. Everything is in this perfect little place, and year in and year out, these wines just really show a really beautiful kind of a soft side that we don't often think about Australia as being a softer side of wine, but here we are.
Yeah, I think what's really cool is when you look at this style of Bordelais blend, it brings, you know, 5 letters to my brain. I don't say it quite often with these grapes, but it's fresh. It's so bright, it's elegant. You have these like taut red fruit, taut purple fruit. And what's really fun from this part of the world is you typically associate Southern Hemisphere Cabernet being like mean and green and like bell peppery, jalapeno, aggressive and bright. And here you have this really like mellow, relaxed style, like poblano pepper, matcha tea. It's a very savory style of wine, but that bright red fruit just really carries it across the palate in such a electric and tessellating way. This is a really cool wine right now, and I'm really intrigued to see where this goes in like the next 30 years or so, and especially being under screw cap, like this will be really exciting to see what happens.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll get there. I might drink pretty much all of it in the next, well, we get like 10 cases a year, so it might not be around for very long. That being said, I think that this is a really great kind of a spread for a region that does boast in having so many different styles and so many different expressions. What did you think about the whole lineup? Is this something that you expected out of Margaret River?
Yeah, as a huge fan of Margaret River, this is definitely a window I would love to look through. I think it's a fantastic producer that's doing a great job of honoring, you know, the 60-ish-year-old tradition of the region, but also pushing the envelope. But at the same time, there's this like through line of like elegance and lift in these wines, but also still like the mid-palate weight you want from something in this part of the world. So truly an impressive producer, and thank you for lugging this all the way over from Mexico City. I know these wines took quite the journey here, just as we did.
Yes, that is very true. This is an opportunity for me and the rest of the Bliss family to say thank you for letting us be with you in 2024 once again. We are committed to making sure that this year is just as cool as last year was. Do please follow Jon as he endeavors into the entrepreneurial world of restauranting in New York. Jon, what's your Instagram handle?
I am at Jonathan Drinks Wine. That is JONATHAN, the New York spelling of it.
Yes, we shop. And I am, of course, at Andrey Ivanov _MS. Follow us at Bliss Wine Concierge on the Grams of Instant. And you can always go to www.blisswineconcierge.com where you can purchase all of these wonderful wines a la carte. You can join our wine club, you can join our travel club, and you can explore even more what Bliss has to offer. So from South Africa, from Hermanus, cheers, and we'll see you next time on What's in the Box. This wine slaps.
It does. It really does.
All right. Well, cool.
Hey, yo, horse, you want some wine? Nay.